Member for Pascoe Vale.
Thank you, Acting Speaker, and I rise to speak in support of the Justice Legislation Amendment Family Violence, Stalking and Other Matters Bill of 2025, a bill that strengthens our laws, modernises our justice system and above all protects women and children from harm. And in beginning, I just want to acknowledge the powerful contributions that have been made by so many members from across the chamber so far on this debate, beginning with the Minister and the lead ministers that spoke to commence the debate, the member for Morty Alec, the Parliamentary Secretary for Men's Behaviour Change, and for his absolute outstanding work in championing reform in this space. We thank you. The member for Ballerine for her powerful outline of toxic attitudes by many young boys and young men and the need to combat those in order to address this issue over future years. The member for Mildura for her absolutely powerful, conscientious and real lived world experience as a victim survivor herself. That contribution has very much left an impression undoubtedly on all of us and beyond in this chamber. And of course, my very good friend and colleague here, the member for Glen Waverley, for sharing his very deep felt and tragic experience of his best friend, whom we lost sadly to the hands of men's violence, and for his courage, his family's courage and support in relation to that very sad case, and for sharing that with us. There's a lot of lessons to be learned and a lot of relevance in relation to this bill, particularly with respect to stalking. This is a bill about safety, it's a bill about accountability, but it's a bill that's about respect. Respect for the stories of victim survivors have carried for years, respect for their courage in coming forward, and respect for frontline workers who deal with the aftermath of violence every single day. And as a member for Pascoe Vale, Coburg, Brunswick West, but also as a local dad myself, I remain deeply committed to doing all I can to stamp out and prevent family violence and gender-based violence, because everyone deserves to feel safe in their homes and their communities. And as part of this, I think it's also timely to acknowledge the work of Respect Victoria, whom yesterday launched their 16 days of activism against gender-based violence campaign here in Parliament. Because this bill is an important step to making sure our justice system continues to respond to violence with clarity, strength, but also compassion. Family violence happens across all our communities, in all kinds of relationships and all too often, and the numbers alone demand us to keep taking further action. Family violence is the #1 law and order issue in Victoria, #1, Acting Speaker. In 2023, Victoria Police responded to 94,170 family violence incidents. In the 12 months to June 25, the number recorded of incidents increased by a further 7.7% to over 106,400 incidents. The rate also increased 5.9%, 1,500 incidents per 100,000 Victorians. The Family Violence Database of 23-24 reported that 64.4% of family violence perpetrators were repeat offenders with a previous police record family violence incident. In essence, Victoria Police responds to one family violence incident every 6 minutes, with nearly 3/4 of victims being women and girls. And across Mary Beck in my community, family violence continues to remain an ongoing scourge. In 2024, Victoria Police recorded 1,789 family violence-related incidents. In 2025, this again rose to 1,889 incidents, a 5.6% increase. Affected family members, victims, continue to also overwhelmingly be women in my community, 1,429 women. But the numbers, of course, don't tell the full story. We've heard about the stories firsthand through those member contributions here today. The real-world journey of a victim survivor begins long before a call to 000 and continues long after a statement is taken or an order is made. Too often that journey involves retelling their experience repeatedly, confronting the person who hurt them, facing a court process that can re-traumatise them, or falling through the gaps in a system never designed to manage the complexity of coercive, psychological and ongoing harm. This bill recognises those gaps. And that's why the bill has been shaped by extensive consultation with victim survivors, frontline practitioners, Victoria Police, courts, legal services, including VAL, Digera, community legal centres, and countless advocates across family violence, sexual assault and stalking sectors. Reforms in this bill that are practical, targeted and reflect those real-world experiences. Firstly, the bill broadens the definition of family violence so it accurately reflects modern forms of abuse. It explicitly includes stalking, a common precursor to lethal violence, systems abuse, where perpetrators weaponise institutions to inflict harm, mistreatment of animals, a tactic that is far more common and more devastating than most people realise. By recognising these behaviours in law, we empower the courts, police and services to intervene earlier and more effectively. Secondly, the bill reduces misidentification, especially for vulnerable groups. Misidentification, believe it or not, is one of the most harmful failures in our system. When the wrong person is named as the perpetrator, the consequences can be catastrophic. Loss of housing, child protection involvement, and exposure to further violence. And the bill requires courts and police to properly consider the risk of misidentification, particularly in minority and disadvantaged community cohorts, and these reforms ensure that the true perpetrator, not the victim, is held accountable. Thirdly, the victim repeatedly told the government, victims have told the government they were tired of having to return for family violence intervention orders renewals because orders were too short. In practice, most of these orders last 12 months or less, even when the risk persists. This bill introduces a default 2-year family violence intervention order, a simple but powerful change that gives victim survivors longer protection, greater stability, and less exposure to re-traumatising through the court process. For perpetrators in custody, the orders will now apply for a length of their sentence plus 12 months, covering the high-risk period after their release. Fourth, we're ending the practice of children ageing out of protection at 18 years. Under current practice, some children listed on their parents' order lose protection the day they turn 18, even when the risk remains. And this bill fixes that. Young people will now remain protected for the full duration of the order without needing to return to court to relive their trauma again. This is sensible, this is fair, and it reflects the Victorian Law Reform Commission's clear advice. Fifth, the bill introduces a minimum age of 12 for family violence intervention orders, respondents to require courts to consider a young person or vulnerable person's ability to understand and comply with the order, and avoids further unfair criminalisation. 6, we're streamlining the family intervention violence orders and stopping perpetrators dodging accountability as well. 7, we're introducing reforms to address stalking and personal safety. Of course, stalking has been a long-standing offence in Victoria, but this bill further clarifies the meaning of coarse conduct, updates the definition of recklessness, recognises harm to animals to stalking, and modernises the structure of offence for police and courts. And this ensures the law reflects the lived experience of stalking victims, particularly women, and I particularly acknowledge the tragic case of Celeste Manor, whose life was tragically taken at the hands of a male stalker, and the ongoing advocacy of her work by her mum, Aggie De Mauro, and the ongoing impacts and trauma as a result to her dad, Tony, and the entire Manor family. 8, we're allowing the courts to issue interim personal safety intervention orders. If police or the court encounter evidence of stalking or violence during bail or a criminal matter, the court can now issue an interim personal safety intervention order automatically, no need for a separate application required, and this protects victims faster with less burden. 9th, the bill extends the provision already used in family violence and sexual offences by providing stronger protections for witnesses. 10th, the bill makes several important changes to sexual trials, including processes that improve the trial process and simplify things, particularly to avoid re-traumatising victims. And this, of course, builds on our work as a state in leading the country when it comes to preventing family violence and gender-based violence. We launched the landmark Royal Commission into family violence and have implemented all of those 227 Royal Commission recommendations, opened the 36 Orange Door sites and established Respect Victoria, along with a number of other investments to combat issues in this space. Locally, we're doing a lot of work in this space as well. We've opened the Harvest Square Housing Project in Brunswick West in partnership with Women's Housing Limited, which specifically is there to support women and children fleeing family violence situations, and they're doing incredible work already. I've met with several of the women directly being housed in that site. I want to acknowledge the work of Phil Cleary as well. On the 4th of May, we commemorated Vicky Cleary Day at Coburg City Oval, hosted by the hard-working brother and staunch gender equality and community services advocate Phil Cleary. The annual event pays tribute to the late Vicky Cleary, who tragically was murdered in 1987 at the hands of men's violence in Coburg, a former partner who stalked and took her life as she was leaving her workplace, a local kinder on Cameron Street. With the life of one woman still being taken at the hands of men's violence every day, one woman's life being taken at the hands of men's violence every 3 to 4 days, pardon me, across the country. Vicky Cleary Day also highlights the need for ongoing reform more broadly to change men's attitude. Phil does incredible work through local schools and sporting clubs, community groups across Victoria, promoting the need to respect women, because we know violence starts with attitudes, particularly amongst young boys. And I continue to advocate and support Phil's work, and there's significant opportunity for government to continue to partner with him, which the Minister is very much aware of, and I draw her attention to, as the dad myself of 2 local young daughters. I want them to grow up in a world that is more respectful towards women, not just for them, but every other young girl in our community. And I thank Phil for his ongoing work and the work of the Coburg Football Club in this space, and also the member for Eltham and the member for Mordialloc who have attended his events in the past. Acting Speaker, I'll leave my contribution there, time permitting, but again, this is all about safety, respect and protection of women and children across our communities.